And thank you for joining us today for, our first webinar of the year. So the Prismic Monogram. So Monogram, a great agency, which we want to showcase today. To anyone who is watching this now, this will be recorded. So don't worry, we'll share this afterwards and post it on YouTube so you can always watch it afterwards. And if you have any questions as we're going along here, talking with TJ, talking with Simon, please feel free to share them in the chat, and we're going to address that either at the same time or at the end if we have enough time. And without further ado, let's start. Let's get started. So we're first going to go over the summary of today as to what we're going to be going and talking about in the presentation. First, we're going to do a quick intro on Prismic. I'm sure most of you already know a little bit about Prismic, but just give you a quick refresher and to give you a better understanding of Monogram. Then afterwards, we're going to talk about why and how Monogram uses Prismic, how did they find out about us, and what kind of projects they use it on. And then we're going to illustrate all that directly with actual client case studies so for all the Trekkies out there, LeVar Burton's website, for Monogram's very own website, how they created it in a way, a slice machine, and then how that relates also to schema.org. And then the last will be a kind of custom catalog for a sort of an e-commerce experience with Bravura. So first, without further ado, let's introduce the speakers. So my name is Adrian. I'm part of the account management team at Prismic. I've been working here for 4 years, and I basically introduce people to the tool, understand their needs, and see if it fits with their requirements. I'm joined with Simon.
Hi, everyone. I'm Simon from customer success team here at Prismic, and what we do in customer success team, we work on onboarding our users and automations and making sure that you adopted Prismic at its best.
So Prismic, obviously, as you all know, it's a component-based CMS. Our goal basically is to make it super easy for both developers to create websites quickly, but also for content editors to be able to create and edit content on the fly. Now, obviously, there's a ton of other headless CMSs out there on the market. So what makes this a little bit different are some of the features that we're going to talk about today and how TJ uses them in a lot of projects. For instance, slices. So these components, these building blocks that you have for web projects, whether it's a website or application, that are there to basically relate to something like a call to action, a carousel, really whatever you want, to make it super flexible, basically, to have content editing teams be able to create a landing page on the fly without having to go through a developer each time. Another key feature that we have now, specifically for e-commerce, but there's many other use cases, are integration fields. So simply put, the ability to connect to any kind of third-party service, whether it's your Shopify catalog or it's some kind of translation catalog. Really, there's a ton of use cases there if you want to be able to simply copy in some of the content you have on a third-party service and enrich it through Prismic. Then some of the key features that we really emphasize on in terms of creating the best possible experience for content editors is scheduling and releases, the ability to create content ahead of time, preview that content with shareable previews, and then bundle all of that in a release where you can basically schedule that to go live at a specific date and time, whether it's for some kind of a promotion, Black Friday or anything like that. It's really great and really practical and empowers the content editors to do that on their own. We put a few logos here just to illustrate some of the different use cases that you can have with Prismic. Since we're an API first CMS, you can really have anything there. So it could be something like a blog, as simple as a blog for the Container Store, or Jor that wants to highlight their products on specific e-commerce platforms like Sephora, or an entire e-commerce platform managed on Zwift, or then maybe a marketing platform for DigitalOcean. Their entire homepage and marketing content is managed there. So that's just a bit of the few project types that you can have using Prismic. But without further ado, let's talk a little bit more about Monogram and what they do. TJ?
Monogram is a digital agency from Atlanta, Georgia. We build digital products, and we've kind of grown into the Jamstack space. We like to think that we were kind of doing Jamstack before Jamstack was even a word, and we're proud to say that we're pretty much relying on Prismic for nearly all of our clients, and we're completely Jamstack, and we're really pushing that space. And we build web apps and websites and all kinds of digital web products.
Cool. And so, for a lot of users sometimes who don't necessarily have those dev resources internally, and they're trying to which agency do I pick? What sets you apart from the rest?
I think we have a few differentiators. One of our differentiators is the fact that obviously we're Jamstack. We've heard from so many clients that Jamstack is something that many agencies don't offer, or it's kind of scary that some agencies don't even know about. And it kind of shocks us because we've been doing Jamstack for like 4 or 5 years now. We're like really pushing that revolution. We're featured on Jamstack.org and etc. So Jamstack is one of our differentiators. We're big proponents of that. The other thing is that some agencies focus mainly on design and others focus on development, but we like to focus on the full experience. So all the way from ideation of a product, all the way to design, UX, UI, wireframing, design, visual design, branding, development with using the best technologies, all the way to the end and DevOps and deployment, which we actually use Vercel now, and more on that later. But the delivering the full experience and all wrapped in a bundle of really good service and like old school service where we offer our personal phone numbers to our clients and they can call us up at any time, even at night or whenever, if they ever have an issue. And we're not like the cold type of agency where you have to go through a whole phone menu and press option 9 to connect with your representative or any of that.
And you're wondering how long it's going to cost you that to call you guys or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, we're all about the human touch and just doing really good work. And we're just a bunch of passionate people about design and tech.
So to anyone attending this webinar right now, feel free to reach out to Monogram on monogram.io to them. They're a great team and you'll be in good hands. But let's focus a little bit on how you guys at Monogram found out about Prismic and how you're using it.
Yeah, so like I just mentioned earlier, is we've always been Jamstack. So in the beginning, we used to build Jekyll websites, and Jekyll websites were great, and we loved them because we were building statically and deploying that to AWS CloudFront. So your website is replicated across 200 or 300 different locations around the world, literally zero chance of going down. And it's just really fast and secure, and there's no virtually unhackable. But you can probably imagine we ran ourselves into a corner with that approach with content management. Because the data, the content of every website was stored as text files, YAML files within the project itself that we would then commit to GitHub and build alongside the website. So as we grew and as our clients grew, we realized we were spending way more time than we wanted to actually editing content. And our development team obviously wanted to focus on development. They didn't want to focus on content management. So we started looking for a solution.
People can relate to that for sure. We see that very often, like people that have their websites basically being hard coded and having developers do the heavy lifting of like modifying content. And let's be honest, like that is not where they want to spend their time. They want to spend it on development, iterating on the code base and things like that, just not editing content.
Yeah, exactly. So we started, hunting for something like a headless CMS, and that term did not exist back then. But we knew what we wanted, which was essentially a headless CMS. We didn't want the front end because we already knew that was Jekyll for us. We needed something with just the back end and like an API. So we found Contentful and we found Prismic, and the
headless CMS OGs.
Basically the OGs. And we did proof of concepts with both, and we did some studies and some client interviews, and we realized that Prismic was just easier to use. It made a lot more sense, especially to somebody converting over from another tool like WordPress. They've spent their whole lives working on WordPress, and now all of a sudden you expect them to learn something new. Prismic makes that transition easy because its UI is very intuitive. The UX is intuitive. You literally log in, and within 2 or 3 clicks, you've edited and scheduled and published your content. So that's why we ultimately went with Prismic for the most part. The other thing was that Prismic had really good documentation and made it really easy to provide all those APIs. So for example, you had a JavaScript API, a PHP API. So we had options in terms of getting that content. So those are kind of the two reasons we started using Prismic, and we started with one client and then another and another, and it was kind of like just a snowball effect, and we started just loving it.
TJ,
yeah.
I had a question. You mentioned that you don't want to redevelop the WordPress websites. For non-technical people here who's attending this event, can you tell us a few tips why you prefer not going with WordPress right now?
Yeah, I mean, I'll try to be nice as I can, but WordPress is just, in our experience, we've turned down a lot of WordPress projects, and the reason for that is we cannot have a good conscience knowing that we're building something that's prone to hacking, prone to malware, will go down if you hit more than X number of users concurrently, or have the ability where you install a single plugin on your website and it just messes up something else. It's just not a good technology. It's not a good platform in our opinion. And really, the only thing that WordPress has going for it is just familiarity. There's a lot of community behind it, a lot of people that have done only that. But we're really trying to educate our clients and our users and our potential clients on the drawbacks of WordPress, the insecurity going down, the plugins just not always being compatible with each other, always having to stay updated. You're kind of like you're keeping all your eggs in one basket, where your CMS and your website and your data and everything's all in one place. So it's vulnerable to hacking, and if it goes down or if somebody gets access to it, then you've basically lost everything. We could go on, and we have a lot of documentation about this. So if anybody needs something like that, just let us know. We'll send you guys a bunch of PDFs and things about why WordPress and versus Jamstack and why Jamstack is better.
Sure. I mean, we already have like few blog posts written about it, but more better.
Yeah, of course.
So moving on to next, what is your tech stack that you're using usually in your projects?
So yeah, I guess we've kind of grown two ideologies of how we're using Prismic. One on the left is what I just discussed, is our early days of kind of discovering the whole Jamstack approach, and we kind of trailblazed our own path before there was any set of guidelines or anything about Jamstack. But it was Prismic with a webhook that would actually, back in the day, it was a DigitalOcean server that would build the Jekyll and Gulp, and it would download the data from Prismic, pass it to Jekyll. Jekyll would then build the website, compress it, and then deploy it to AWS. Ever since then, in 2020, actually, we partnered with Vercel, another company that's really adventing the Jamstack space and works great with Prismic, by the way. And Vercel actually does the building and the deployments now. So that's kind of our original approach. We have about 40 clients, 40 websites using that approach even today. It's not an old technology by any means. It is unique. There's not a lot of people using this approach, but we've built it in a way that it works really well, and we'll still gladly build a website with that approach even today. However, on the right is the Next.gen stack, which is probably everyone here is familiar with. Next.js, Nuxt.js, SPA, client-side scripting, statically generated websites. Very similar to Gatsby. We did not put Gatsby here because we don't build just websites, we build web apps as well. And we've grown to like Next.js and Nuxt.js. Depends on your flavor of React versus Vue. Where a client who has a website today might need a web app in the future, we don't have to then code a different platform for them. So Next.js lets us build the website and the web app together in one platform. So that's kind of why these two are our things of choice, our platforms of choice, so to speak. And again, Vercel works great with them.
So between the two, between like your more like traditional approach, shall we say, and your more next-gen approach, how do you, depending on the project, like how do you pick one or the other?
Well, honestly, it's a matter of taste, and it's a matter of client needs. And certain clients might be like a React stack, where they'll obviously get the Next.js. And if they're stack agnostic, then we typically go with the Nuxt.js one, because in the early days, Nuxt was the one that we got kind of working with our stack the best. The reason being, long story short, Nuxt was closer in the developer experience to Jekyll, so that it allowed us to easily migrate Jekyll websites to Nuxt without too much redoing. But any new projects we do from scratch are typically with Next, because we think Next has a much larger community, and they're obviously built by Vercel, who's also our partner, and we love it and we think it's awesome. So long story short, we have a little bit of both. We have equal compatibility in both. So we have a lot of Nuxt apps, but Next is probably our future.
Very cool. and I guess compared to maybe some agencies that we talk to that very much specialize in like an e-commerce or specific types of experiences, basically, you guys are kind of jack of all trades, and you create some pretty cool use cases, some niche use cases. So let's go to the next slide and see exactly the kinds of things that you've built with Prismic and the API system.
Yeah, so obviously the CMS is the largest use case. Everybody knows Prismic is a CMS, but we've loved it so much, and we've been using it for so long and for so many clients that we've found a lot of edge cases and edge uses for Prismic. For example, we use it as an image and file CDN. So as a developer, if you're building an app that doesn't necessarily need a CMS, but every app might need an image or two once in a while, we don't like putting content with our code. So it doesn't make sense for us to upload an image into the app in the static folder or whatever, and then commit it to GitHub. And then now that image is forever part of your application. Changing it requires redeploying the new application and all of the pitfalls that come with that, resizing it and all that stuff. So what we'll do is we'll just create an empty baby repository in Prismic and upload that image there. And we just use the Prismic's ImageX API to get the link for that image, and then we'll just paste the link directly into the app, which lets us abstract the content again away from the application. ImageX is awesome because it can do all kinds of image transformations all via query strings. So you can say like, and width equals 500, and then you'll resize the image to 500 on the fly. So you can just do that in your app without having to change the image.
Yeah, very cool. That is definitely for everyone here a best practice. Just upload a high-res image on Prismic, and then just with the ImageX parameters that are available to you, you can do whatever you want on the fly. And for anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about that, there is also an ImageX Prismic webinar that we hosted back in December. So if you want to see that, it's on our YouTube channel. But another one that we see, and we see this actually pretty often from clients who ask us, like, is it possible to create forms in Prismic? And so you guys built that. So yeah, I'd love for you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, so it's kind of interesting that we didn't actually plan it that way, and it's not a client-facing thing. It's more for us. It's an internal tool. But basically, in 2020, early 2020, a lot of our clients reached out to us and asked us if we had a form solution that allowed them to convert paper forms to digital. And at that point, we weren't really doing that, but we thought that this was a good opportunity to build a solution, to build a tool. So we built Monogram Forms. It's an application /tool/website. It's almost like an enterprise grade thing where we set it up for the clients. But we needed our use case was a client can have multiple forms, and we have multiple clients. So we didn't want to keep hard coding these forms with the input fields and the select fields and the radio buttons. It could get tiring, and then if we ever decide to change the design going forward or something, then we have to go back and modify all the forms. So we wanted to abstract the form structure for each client and each form, and abstract the code itself. So in Prismic, we use slices to create different form fields. So for example, a name field was a slice, an email field is a slice, a select menu dropdown is a slice, a radio button is a slice. And in Prismic, you just create a new type, you just create a new form, and you assign a client to it, and you can just build with slices, build your form down. And on the other end, there's a Jekyll builder running on Vercel again, which actually builds down the page based on the Prismic content. Prismic, just to clarify, we on the back end we use Zapier to submit to, and then Zapier can then post to DocuSign or Stripe or Google
Whatever,
Sheets or
whatever
wherever, multiple
service you're
workflows.
using,
It really depends on the client.
Yeah.
But just to clarify, Prismic does not receive this data, the client data. Prismic's just letting us build the UI in an easy way and manage it. So without having a developer having to build the form every time.
Yeah, when you're saying you, basically, it is an end user from whatever business team. They have the ability to create the forms on their own. So they're the ones just choosing which fields to put in there through Prismic, and then that gets exposed to the application.
Exactly.
But it's true, Prismic does not handle any kind of user generated content. All of that just has to go through application and through some third party service. But you can handle all the placeholders and as you said, kind of customize those forms.
Yeah, definitely.
And so another different use case here you have was a data warehouse with I think this was for a kind of a specific use case that you had from a client that was going from a bit more of a traditional technology, shall we say.
Yeah, so one of our clients, they were a bit larger. They were transitioning from they wanted a new website, but simultaneously their product data was almost non-existent to the point where it was in paper, in filing cabinets, and they had some PDFs, and they didn't have like a cohesive database of all the products that they offer. So we didn't want to create a database for them and then import that into Prismic, because now we would have two databases to sync up. So we thought, why not just use Prismic as a database, because they don't really need hardcore SQL stuff or queries or anything like that. They just need a one source of truth for all their content to know what products they offer. And all the images in highest res, like you mentioned. And so we built, obviously there was a digitization process where we made a spreadsheet and all of that, but then we imported that data into Prismic and we modified the data in Prismic. The client helped us validate the data in Prismic. The UI is so intuitive and it's just so easy to use that marketing and business people from the client were able to come in and help us validate the content. The search works really well in Prismic. So they were able to search for SKUs and item numbers and all kinds of things. And obviously we were able to use Prismic to feed that data back to a new spreadsheet that the client can use for validation, as well as to feed the website. So that's another big benefit of Prismic, is it can feed data to multiple sources at the same time.
Very cool. And so the last use case then was data transformation. So using APIs to organize that data. So that's kind of correlated, I guess, to the last one.
Yeah. So basically, like similar to the data warehouse, obviously a data warehouse is not very useful if it's not getting the data out and transforming it. So we used we built a small internal tool for us. Again, it was based on Jekyll, but it works great. That downloads the data for that client from Prismic. It actually converts for every entry in each type. It'll create a spreadsheet with all the fields. So it'll create, for example, a CSV, and then that CSV gets imported into Google Sheets, and then we could have like a Zapier webhook that gets triggered to run some sort of mass transformation, mass filtering, and then that gets imported back into another Jekyll instance that can then pull that data and create a new spreadsheet, or it can actually create the import files for Prismic. So you can go and import those back into Prismic, creating an entire ETL loop from inception all the way to inception again, with transformation in between.
I mean, honestly, this is why I wanted to present this to everyone today, just so that they can sort of like understand the possibilities that you have with Prismic. Because a lot of times it's true, we do see like just for the website, but there's actually a ton of stuff you can do. Since it's an API, you kind of like you have a lot of freedom, and I feel like you guys really embody that there. And let's actually go there, and we're going to talk about some use cases real quick. Again, in the comment section, if you guys have any questions to TJ that you want us to address as we're doing this, please feel free to share. Happy to engage with you guys and talk about that. But let's talk about it. Let's talk about the first use case that we're going to illustrate today with LeVar Burton's very own website. So can you tell us a little bit more about where he was coming from, what did he want, I guess, from this new website, and what you guys delivered?
Yeah, of course. So he was using Squarespace, and him and his team, and this was again around early 2020 in the onset of COVID in the United States. LeVar is such a great person, and he likes to serve others. He realized that he wanted to help his people and help the country with the onset of COVID. He foresaw that a lot of people are going to be maybe hurt or mentally, perhaps they might need a lot of uplifting, or maybe if they're alone, locked in a lockdown by themselves, they need some sort of entertainment. For especially kids not going to school, not having to be able to play with their friends. So he saw a lot of need coming, and he wanted to release a few initiatives that would help that and help people. For example, he wanted to do book readings online, virtually, to adults as well as to kids. So he scheduled a lot of different book readings, and he used his attention grabbing skills. Essentially, he can hold people's attention for hours at a time with his such a nice voice, and he's such a good reader. And he also wanted to create like a podcast and just talk about things every week. And he was also co-authoring a children's book, which was releasing in spring, I believe, 2020. So there were a lot of things coming. He anticipated a lot of load coming to his website. There was a lot of, I believe he has like 5 million followers on Twitter or something like that. And there was a huge need. So he came to Monogram, and he said that he needed, and him and his team, they needed a way to have a dynamic website that can have an easy to use backend, which him or his team can use to edit things and publish things at certain critical milestones. So obviously we knew that Prismic was the right solution for this. So we built him a Jamstack website. This was actually a Jekyll website as well. And we kind of pioneered this Prismic driven UI. That's what we call it. And I can kind of talk about that, I guess, in the coming slides.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, because that's true. That does illustrate, back to the feature we're talking about, scheduling, and that is a big thing. Having contenters having the ability to create content ahead of time, schedule it to go live. So typically, you're talking about a book release. That's obviously something you're preparing, months ahead of time, and you want it to go live at a specific date and time whenever the book is available for purchasing.
Yeah. So exactly. So that was exactly the use case. That this, for example, just this one widget. The book is called The Rhino Who Swallowed the Storm. He wanted to capture people's email addresses beforehand who were interested in possibly purchasing the book. So we had a logic in the Jekyll that said if there's no link that exists in Prismic, to show the email form. So as soon as the link came out, it was a pre-order link. We put the link in Prismic, and we scheduled it to publish at 12:01 a.m., exactly the time when the pre-orders began. Obviously, they flooded. The site handled it like a champ. It was great. But Prismic was able to allow actually him and his team to just schedule that themselves, and they were confident that it would work because Monogram had built it that way, and we had tested it before in a staging environment. So essentially, they were able to publish the pre-order link, and then I believe sometime after the pre-order link was there, when the book was actually released, that link had to convert to a buy now link. And that had to be scheduled as well. So in the old days, or you would have to, call your agency and make sure somebody stays up at 12 o'clock at night to flip the switch, if you will. And if something breaks, then they would have to scatter and wake up everyone else to fix it. But in this day and age, he was able to just change the link, save, and schedule it to publish at a certain date and time. Prismic makes it really easy. It just shows you a calendar. You guys already know. And basically, it just works great. And we were able to hide and show certain elements of the website. We're able to preload future schedules of his book readings in Prismic and schedule them all to stagger to release at every other week. So there was a lot of use made of the scheduling functionality in Prismic with this website, and it's worked really well.
We got Tim McKinnon here who's asking us if we could show any of this live. I do believe a lot of this stuff is, client based, so we can't really necessarily show some of that stuff. But actually, the next use case we're going to talk about is going to be a little bit closer to home for Monogram. So we might be able to show, if we have enough time towards the end, to show a little bit more of the back end, maybe some of the code specifics there. So without further ado, let's move on to the next use case. And this is something that we see a lot with agencies. Either they're trying it out, they've had a successful client project and they feel like Prismic was a good fit, or they're just trying out a new headless CMS tool and they want to do it for their own website. So that's what Monogram did with their own website. They transitioned and they have their website now running with Prismic.
Yeah, so basically, up until this current iteration of our website, we were always we kept very tight rein on our content, and it was all very precise and curated. But we kind of ran ourselves into a hole where Monogram was expanding, our service lines are expanding, and there's a need to generate a lot of content for our website so that our clients who are coming can get more information than our old site was giving them. So we designed this very large website with a lot of pages and a lot of different things, but obviously we didn't want to get into that situation where we were maintaining that content again ourselves. So we needed an easy way for our marketing team and for our business development team to be able to curate this content, for example, every week, or maybe we're trying to target a certain client and there's something that we wanted to say or highlight on the website. So Prismic was perfect use case for that. So obviously we love it for all our clients. So why not use it for us? And what's cool about this website is that this was our first website with Nuxt.js, and it was our first non-Jekyll website actually with Prismic. And we learned a lot, and we built in a lot of things into our stack, into our boilerplate, if you will. That help alleviate some of the concerns that we had with using this new technology. For example, one of the concerns it was that we didn't want the new site to feel like a rich text document, essentially. So Prismic, in like WordPress days, like you just get a rich text editor and then you can just build your page down. But we wanted it to be richer, and we wanted it to have different types of sections. So like 3 sections across or 4 sections across, etc. So we really heavily leveraged slices in this. So we built 12 different slices. And then the other thing was we wanted to retain SEO, which was very important to us, given that it's on our own website. So we used the static generation methods of Nuxt.js to build a static website, but then also implement schema.org, which is a really big deal for us, and we like tagging things for schema so that AI and Google and Siri and other things can actually interpret the meaning of the data rather than just having the data on the page. But we can talk about those in the coming slides as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to that point specifically on slices, I think, and that's when we can move on to the next slide about Slice Machine and how you guys went about it, creating that.
So we like to joke around that we built Slice Machine before it was cool, before Prismic actually built it, because it just came out of a need for us, and we needed a way to have a library of slices where if you modify a slice on one page, it can actually modify the design on the other pages that are using the instance of that slice. So we built 12 slices. Here's some examples of some of them. This is actually the real code. So in Vue and Nuxt, we built a component that actually is called a slice chooser. That's what we called it. Slice machine sounds cooler. Slice chooser was it was a component where you would pass the slice data to it. You could repeat this component for every slice on the page. You pass the slice data, and then there is a lot of basically VIFs and VLSIF statements that determine the type of slice and then loads the appropriate component to display, and then actually is passing the slice data to that component, as you can see. So it worked pretty well, but obviously now it's an official feature, Slice Machine, and we love it. And we're starting to find cool new use cases for that.
And yeah, and speaking of which, I mean, it was relatively recently launched by our core engineers team, but how was your experience with Slice Machine? Did you notice any difference in terms of like developing your projects for your clients or? Whatsoever?
Yeah, honestly, Slice Machine kind of perfected slices for us because slices themselves are amazing, and I think that's one of the biggest differentiators that Prismic has, other than its ease of use. Slices are the best thing ever. But Slice Machine just really made them even better in the sense that if you were to edit a slice in one place, it edits the other instances of that slice as well, so that you can kind of really truly abstract the structure of the data from the display, and that's really enabled us to not think too deeply about how to we don't want the design of the slice to influence how the data is structured. We want the data to just be itself, like a title for a title to just be itself, a description should just be itself, and then have the display be different. And we didn't also want to keep maintaining all these slices as well. So Slice Machine helps us almost create a templated library of these, and it just works really well in that way.
That's actually really interesting. So a lot of the slices that you built, were you able to maybe reuse them with client projects that you have afterwards? Because you were saying, again, since the slices that you're creating can be independent from whatever display, whatever design, whatever CSS you want to put on that, you could technically, you're building your library and making it easier and faster for new websites?
Yeah, that's true. There are certain types of, obviously there's like very basic slices that we don't reuse. Like if it's just an image and text, we'll just try to cater that for every single client. But if it's like a complex slice, for example, a slideshow or like a testimonial slider with the arrows on the right and left, with a very complex data structure and a lot of JavaScript that goes alongside those, then yeah, we do reuse the backend data structure of those across clients, and then we'll just adjust the display on the front end to match that client's style and their brand.
Very cool, very cool. And so then I think you want to talk a little bit more about schema.org and how, well, for your website, how important that was.
Yeah, so this was something very close to our hearts because we're very big proponents of SEO, and we don't ever want to hear one of our clients ever say that, hey, you guys have terrible SEO on your own website, how are you going to help me? So we want to make sure that our website is like at the top of its game. It's always using the latest SEO recommended technologies. And we're like, for example, when Google announced that SSL is required and HTTPS is preferred, we were already all SSL. All of our clients since day one had the lock and then the security. Just one example, all of our websites are mobile first and responsive, since Google now indexes mobile first. But schema.org is one of those things that I think is going to have a really big impact on the future of SEO. It's already starting to do that with Google's rich text results. For example, in Schema, if you determine a recipe via the schema.org, their suggested recipe data structure, it'll pull that recipe up to the top. So if you say like how to make lasagna, you'll see like all the lasagna recipes, but only the ones who tag their schema.org properly. So those guys have a pretty good advantage over the people that haven't tagged the schema.org. So in that sense, long story short, we're rendering the schema.org JSON in this Nuxt.js website. We're rendering it as static on the page before the page even loads. And we're also using Prismic data to help us build that JSON so that we don't have to maintain two different sets of data, one in Prismic and one in the schema. We're actually using data from Prismic to help us build the structured data in the schema.org. So and that varies client to client, but we've developed a component and a mechanism to make it easy for us to do that.
Very cool, very cool. It's true. We get that a lot from clients as well, especially if they're using Nuxt or Next, and they're always wondering like, how does this impact SEO? You know, I don't want to go through this whole thing where the website is super fast, but then our SEO just like plummets for some reason. So thanks for shedding some light on that aspect. And now we're going to move on to the last use case here, and it's a bit of a unique use case here for an e-commerce experience, shall we say? It's more of a like next generation catalog where people could have the ability to customize their doorknobs with Bravura. And so I'm gonna just let you talk a little bit more about that, about the use case and how you went about it, because there's some really pretty cool things that's happening in the back end inside of Prismic.
Yeah, so this was a relatively larger client as well, and this is a very new project. It's only about a month since they were released, this new website, so it's very cutting edge. However, their old website was on WordPress, and it was constantly getting hacked. We were actually became administrators of the website to help facilitate the transfer of data. However, we realized that there were about 3,000 emails a week coming in, spam emails, as comments and moderation emails through the website, even though the comments were turned off, despite the comments plugin being completely disabled. Somehow, some script found a backdoor into the site, and it was just really bad. But just an example of why Jamstack is better. So this new website is again built with Nuxt. But some of the use cases of how Prismic helped us with this is a little different than the other ones. Is they needed a way to mass import thousands of content items and pictures. And they also, not just that, while this product data was being imported, they also wanted to automatically create connections of certain Prismic types data to other content relationships. So yeah, right there. Yeah, sorry. Perfect. That's great. So each of these white squares you see is a type in Prismic. And actually, this is the data diagram. And it took us like a really long time to figure out because it's just a lot of complexities between things and what's the proper way. And we also didn't want the client to have to maintain 20,000 different combinations of products as well. So we wanted them to maintain as little products as possible and then have all the generation happen on the front end. So in Prismic, for example, I won't go through this whole thing because it'll bore you guys, but basically a product is comprised of a handle and a rosette being a backplate. A handle and a rosette each have a finish, which is another type, and then a function, which is also tied to product. And you can have multiple functions in a product. And there was a lot of business logic behind this. And Prismic literally helped us create this structure one-to-one in Prismic as we had envisioned it. So we actually drew this out before we imported it into Prismic. And then Prismic literally helped us import this exactly the way it was. And that kind of just reinforces the belief that Prismic can really handle any data structure. There's no limit to what it can do. Content relationships are probably the most powerful thing. And then even when you query, you can use GraphQL, for example, and you can get all of this data deeply all the way down to, for example, go all the way from the collection to the finish and get all the data alongside it through one API call. So it's very powerful.
Yeah, that's huge. It's true. Like when I started back at Prismic a long time ago, you couldn't do that. You couldn't like query multiple documents and all the content relationship and get all the different fields. And so I think this is why it's great that this illustrates exactly the complexity behind it. And yeah, thanks, Simon, because just for everyone to like understand exactly what's going on here, they're basically Bravura has their catalog or all the different customization possibilities inside of Prismic. But then for the end user, basically you're enabling them to just customize, create their own doorknobs, as you're saying, just like a handle and a rosette. I learned that word, by the way. And having it there all be powered by Prismic. So yeah, really, really cool use case.
Yeah, definitely. This configurator, there's I believe it's about 2,000 lines of JavaScript. It's Vue.js powered. It's making all kinds of calls to Prismic, but this is completely powered by Vue.js and Prismic. So all the little thumbnails you see on this configurator, and this is a public website, by the way, you can visit it. It's bravurahardware.com. And you can see the thumbnails are all coming from Prismic. The rosette images are all coming from Prismic, as well as the little finish circles. And not just that, but also the content relationships of a lever might have a rosette that it's compatible with, and it might not be compatible with another one. So we use all of that logic from Prismic to actually hide and show and gray out certain options that the user cannot select, because you cannot build every possible combination of everything. So there's some business logic behind that. And also, even if you could, in the backend, the client did not want to release certain combinations of certain products that they might think maybe don't look as good. So all of that logic,
control over that, basically, like the logic and all that. All of that is managed by the actual client.
Well, the client kind of told us the logic. They gave us like essentially a big spreadsheet with X's of what's compatible with what. And then there was another spreadsheet of that, which took that to another layer of what's compatible with what finish. And And that's what we were kind of studying when we built the entire crazy data structure to understand how really this data is going to work. But at the end, you can see how it took a culmination of all this crazy large amounts of content, all this large amounts of data, this insane data structure to build a user experience that's just so simple to the end user that they just click things and they're able to build the product and then share the link to that product with their friends or just bookmark the link for later browsing or whatever they would like to do. But we're huge proponents of the belief that the end experience should always be simple. Doesn't matter how complex the back end is.
Very cool. Well, for anyone who's sorry, go ahead, Simon.
I had a question. You spoke about like craziness in request requirements, like on your memory, in your experience. Can you tell us some crazy ideas or crazy requirements that you had from clients, and that you have to turn down or have to implement them in the project?
Well, honestly, we've never really turned down a requirement. We've heard so many crazy things that I can't even think of what to tell you first, honestly. But we've gotten to the point where we always tell our clients, like, we can do anything. We know Prismic to the extent that we understand that it's virtually limitless in functionality. And then also our development team, we build things from scratch. So we're virtually limitless on that end as well. So we never really turn down any crazy request unless we think that it's going to hurt the client's business. For example, using Comic Sans or something as a font.
I see. Interesting.
We're getting a quick question from Syed. Will this be posted on Prismic YouTube channel after the event? Yeah, betcha. We're probably going to cut this up for the different use cases, and you'll be able to see this afterwards. So no worries, you can share that. Does anyone else have any questions otherwise? Because that was basically it in terms of like different use cases that we have. Again, if you're looking for a great agency, feel free to contact Monogram. If you're looking for a custom door handle, go to Bravura. They have some pretty cool things there. They have a pretty cool tool, which I hear is pretty quick. Otherwise, yeah, as we're saying, we're kind of wrapping this up here. We got 5 minutes left on this webinar, so happy to answer any and all questions you guys may have.
There's one thing actually I forgot to add about Bravura. It wasn't in the slides, but this is we interface this with Algolia search. So we built a Google function that runs in Google Cloud that actually whenever data is published in Prismic, it actually takes the data, converts it, and sends it to Algolia, so that Bravura actually uses Algolia search, and it's really fast and it's pretty cool. So that's just one of the things and just another thing that Prismic can do. So it's just literally infinite stuff. But yeah, sorry.
That's a great example, honestly, because it's true. A lot of e-commerce platforms, that's kind of the go-to solution we're going to give people is Algolia. Whenever they have like a large catalog of things and they just want to be able to index all their items and all the content from Prismic, and apparently it's pretty seamless to do that. So. Hopefully we'll be able to have a webinar specifically on that, on search. I know it's a huge thing.
Yeah.
You were mentioning e-commerce in 2021, but search obviously is also really, really big there.
Yeah. Let us know. We've done it for many clients. We can help.
And last time we talked, TJ, you mentioned also that that you implemented Google Analytics in the like you can insert some kind of Google ID into the document, so it gets like the traffic by Google Analytics. Can you tell us a bit more about it? I was surprised to learn it, so it was.
Yeah, of course. Like in the scheme of doing all kinds of things with Prismic, one of our clients wanted the ability to edit the Google Analytics ID for their website on their own without having to dependent on us. And we just put the field in Prismic. It's called Google Analytics ID, and they can paste their UA dash whatever 9-digit, 13-digit ID, and the website then takes that from Prismic, renders it onto the page with the Google script tag, and that's it. So what's cool is about that use case is that client wanted to change their analytics ID for like a I think 48-hour period, because they were having a marketing agency take control of their analytics during that time to be able to run some sort of testing. So for whatever reason, they wanted to do it that way. They were able to do that with Prismic and schedule it to the second exactly when that cutoff should happen. and it was very seamless. It was just 1 second. It's one analytics ID. The other second, there's another one. Not even one user was lost in between that. And yeah, even on this page, like, another funny thing we did was one of our clients wanted to make it snow on the website during like the holidays, like between Thanksgiving and maybe New Year's. And we used particles.js to render a script onto the page that made it snow. And that's actually a toggle switch in Prismic where they can turn it on and off, and they can actually schedule it to start and schedule it to finish, because you can schedule anything with Prismic, and people love that.
Make it thematic. Very cool. We actually got a question from Jedediah. Have you ever used Prismic in a mobile or native apps? And is there any equivalent to slices you have developed in that context?
So we kind of focus mainly on web and web apps. But that being said, we do have some capabilities in mobile and native. In terms of slices, slices really are they're just groupings of content fields. So really they're agnostic to display. So if they were to be pulled into a mobile app, they can be displayed completely differently than they're displayed on a website, for example. So if that's ever a use case, we're pretty confident that we can use slices in a mobile app as well. It really depends. Like, a lot of questions come where people ask, does Prismic do this or does Prismic do that? We always try to flip the conversation around and say that Prismic can do anything. We want it to tailor. We want to tailor your backend, your Prismic, to your business and your business needs and your business requirements, rather than the other way around. Because that once clients think that way, then really anything is possible.
That's a great way of putting it. That's because we do get that, like we're always going to get that feature list requirements, but it's also like, well, what are you going to do? Like, how are you going to model that content? What application are you using? And really have to like delve into the actual use case of what they want to do. But with that being said, anyone who has any questions or any use case, please feel free to reach out to us, and we're happy to address it, both in tandem with Monogram or just us. Let's see if we have any more questions here. I don't believe so. And we're just up on the hour. So I guess thank you everyone very much for attending. TJ, thank you so much for taking the time today to go over all these use cases, to go over the history a little bit about Monogram. I hope everyone got to have a chance to learn a little bit more about you guys, and hopefully they'll be able to reach out to you very soon.
Thank you so much, Adrian. Thank you, Simon. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, TJ.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Stay safe out there. I guess wash your hands, and we'll see you next time.
And wear your mask.
And wear your mask. Bye, everyone.
See you. Bye.